Good evening and welcome to the Young and New Masons Interclub Social Extra. We're once again joined by Richard Hone QC, I should say very worshipful brother, Richard Hone QC, President of the Masonic Charitable Foundation. Richard, thank you so much for joining us once again.
It's a great pleasure.
Thank you. We've had such a great response from the social last Sunday or the Sunday before that, where you joined us and talked about the Masonic Charitable Foundation as a whole and your involvement. Very well received. So it'd be great to get these questions that we didn't quite have time for in the Q&A last week. Joining me once again is Matty. Hey Matty, how are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Good. I speak as though I run the show, but it's a team effort. But this is my radio personality taking over and trying to do things right. So we'll start the extra with Matthew asking the questions. We'll obviously say the name of the brother that asked it, and we'll get a response from you, Richard. So Matthew, take it away.
Richard, our first question is from Anne Kirby, who's from the Pale Blue Club, and she asks, how can we make a donation to the MCF as a normal member?
How can we make a donation to what?
The Masonic Charitable Foundation, just as a normal member.
Well, it should be as easy as anything, because on the website there are details of how to make donations, and you just need to access mcf.org, and you will find a way of making a donation, all of which will be gratefully received, I can tell you.
And Richard, going on from that, with our lodge almoners that we have in every lodge, I would assume that they have plenty of information that you can go and talk to them as well.
Yes, I mean, that's a good idea, because we interface a lot with charity stewards and lodge almoners, and we have meetings each year for lodge almoners, not lodge almoners, provincial almoners, and charity stewards, who we hope will pass down to lodge almoners and charity stewards what they've learnt from us. And so we trust them to pass down the message, and it tends to work rather well, I think.
And with your provincial grand almoners that you liaise and deal with, Richard, do they have an opportunity to get a lot more involved with the MCF as well, just with the stature they're at in province?
Well, it's their call. They can be involved as much as they want, and we are always open to provincial almoners or charity stewards who want information, and we are very keen to pass that on. And the interface between MCF and the provincial officers is absolutely fundamental to our well-being, fundraising, and success, really.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. It sort of links in with my question, Richard, which is with local lodges, the lodges that we really thrive in, and as members, the considerable amounts of money raised yearly is usually given to local charities or smaller popular charities within a province. Say, where does the main donations and income come into the MCF so it can do the incredible work that it does?
Well, the main sources of income are festivals, of course, and they produce a very significant amount of funds. But also we have investment income, which is reasonable. It's about 17% of the annual spend, which is helpful. And we also have the annual contribution, which everybody pays, of £17 a year as part of their Grand Lodge dues. That raises about £3.6 million a year, which is a great help and goes towards funding our work. So those are the main income streams.
And with the festivals, are provinces asked to raise a certain amount, or is it up to the provinces how much they raise and ultimately where the money goes?
Well, the provincial Grand Master sets a target, and we obviously liaise very closely with him and his team, and we have a fantastic support team led by Paul Crockett, who's an APGM in Surrey, and he's got some very good ideas. He's only recently taken over the main task of liaising with provinces, but it's spearheading a very joined up way of thinking between the province's MCF and what is feasible. Of course, I've just come out of a 4.5-hour board meeting this morning, which went on till 2:30 with the Board of Trustees of MCF. And we've been looking, obviously, at the moment, fundraising activity is not easy to achieve. And so we are factoring in the fact that there will be a lower income coming in from festivals, but that should pick up as and when COVID gets less centre stage and festivals can resume their work. But those festivals that are nearly complete won't be affected very much, but the new ones will, but they've got time to recoup.
Fantastic. Lovely. Thank you for your answer.
Our next one, Richard. Strategically, even with 12 committees and a good board of trustees, taking on this work must obviously be quite time consuming and rather complex. And the question asked is, how has this affected your work / family life, and what would you give in terms of good advice to many Masons taking on work within Freemasonry and trying to bring Masonry forward, make it more efficient in this new modern era?
That's a good question. The individual Mason on the ground probably needs to liaise with the provincial officers to take their own part. Every individual is very important, and some have some incredibly good ideas which need to be spread about, and that's extraordinarily welcome. But it's really through the provincial officers that MCF gets the feedback. And I mean, it would be virtually impossible for us to liaise directly with every lodge for obvious reasons. It would simply be too burdensome. But those who want to take part should be encouraged. We've had, over the period that I've been doing the COVID cases on phase 1, which is just coming to an end, we've virtually dispersed the £1 million that we set aside for each RC regional group of provinces, and almost every province has received funds. We've spent £967,000 out of £1 million, so there are 1 or 2 provinces with a few thousand still to go. But that's work which is now completed, and it's been very interesting to see. As I think I said in my talk, the main areas started off with PPE, which was in terribly short supply and which we were able to fund. And then food banks were the other very important matter, because those who go hungry are in great need, and food banks provide a very, very good source of sustenance for the community, and also for community projects in the province. Anything between £1,500, £3,000 makes a big difference. £1,500, £2,000, £3,000 makes an enormous difference to a small charity, and we've found that incredibly good in terms of the impact that we can make by giving those smaller grants.
Yeah. So I mean, taken away from what you've just said then, Richard, having a good relationship from a grassroots level in terms of private lodges with their provincial liaison officers for their lodges, or the executives within province, having good ideas, good motivation, enthusiasm, and then directing that towards provinces is probably a good path to follow.
Absolutely. And I think we're getting better at the communication level, because now that we're all getting more experienced with remote working, it's amazing what technology can achieve. And I mean, talking to the retiring chief executive, David Innes, who's leaving Friday week, he thinks that Freemasonry is going to change quite radically in the light of the recent experiences we've been having and the ongoing COVID challenges. And things will change at a much greater speed than we believed would happen previously. And in a way, it's tough, but in a way, it's good because it makes you think more strategically and how we are going to cope with these difficult situations.
Has that sort of led you to a point whereby you forecast ahead for maybe a considerable time, so that you've always got that income, you've always got that presence? Have you had to radically change some of your ideas and your advertising, your publications that you were going to put out this year, next year, because of COVID?
To some extent, yes, but I think what is relevant is that we are actually, what we've done, and we've been very sensible, because we foresaw long before COVID that there may be times when things are really tough financially. For example, a great crash in the stock markets, which would affect our investments, we didn't think of pandemics, but pandemics now is center stage. And a year ago, we earmarked a cash fund in MCF so that we could survive for 3 years with the cash fund if necessary. And at the moment, we are unashamedly running a deficit budget on an annual basis, because we have that buffer of £40 million to see us through 3 years of possible hard times. And so we are actually financially extremely sound, and that differentiates us from a number of other charities who haven't taken that stance. So I'm very pleased by that strategic action, that we are insulated for a 3-year period when we can survive with potentially very little income indeed.
Yeah. Lovely. The next question comes from Marcus Jenkins of the Sarsen Club. And he says, what is the best way forward to keep the MCF relevant at lodge level? I mean, going back to what you've just said, do you think it's more important that we maybe direct what we're raising within lodge to the MCF, or should we carry on with the local charities?
I would like to think that the lodge almoner, who's probably the most important individual in relation to MCF, would access the website. And I would like to see, and I've been trying to encourage the members of MCF, 2 in each province, to say to the lodge almoners, access the MCF website, which we've just revamped, and each year have an almoner's report of what the MCF is actually doing, so that lodge members will see that we are actually working quite hard and doing various things that the lodge almoner can home in on and tell the brethren about.
Yeah, I think it would always be a good presentation, because obviously you're such a big entity that we know about, but we've, from my experience, very rarely hear from, not that we have to as such, but being such a part of Masonry, and we're taught about the greatness of charity and what we're doing. I think, do you think it should be more announced within lodges, and particularly the great work that they're doing, case studies, etc.?
I would really like to see every year that one of the lodge officers, probably the almoner or charity steward or whatever, just gives a 15-minute presentation, maybe 20 if necessary, about what MCF is doing for Masonic charity, tied in with what the lodge itself wants to do with its own charitable funds. We've now got the data which permit us to say that Masonic charity, including MCF, actually produces £50 million a year for charitable works in the provinces and metropolitan London. And people don't actually know that. And my job is really to shout from the rooftops that Masonic charity is a terrific force for good. MCF does over 20 million a year, which is pretty impressive. But actually, about 30 million a year comes from the provinces and London. And it is a fantastic story. And it underpins what we're all about.
Exactly. And it's always the first thing that I say to any prospective member or, inquisitive soul that, doesn't know too much about Freemasonry. I was like, well, do you realize the amount of money that in England alone that we are giving to these charities? And maybe it's a good way of starting when introducing new and prospective members.
The Deputy Grand Master would want me to emphasize it's not just money, it's actually time and effort and individual contributions from lodges and provincial sources into the community, which makes the big difference. And we've had so many wonderful stories of individuals doing fantastic work, either producing PPE for hospitals or turning their manufacturing capacity to other things that can help the community.
Yeah.
And this has been a real eye-opener for me. It's widened my vision completely, and it's been very good. I'd just like to say one other thing, that you know about the relief chest, obviously, and phase 2 of COVID we've now opened the relief chest for 7 or 8 months. We've already raised £1.1 million in the relief chest for phase 2 work. MCF is going to match that with £1 million. We may actually match fund the whole lot, but we've more than exceeded our target of £1 million, which is a fantastic achievement in today's rather difficult world. And therefore, we have an armory of funds which we are throwing open to the 9 regional communication groups, who will be able to make bids for between £10,000 and £100,000 for projects that they see as being absolutely central to making an effective difference to the communities that we serve. It's a very exciting project. And the other thing that we've done, the Relief Chest team has been working very hard, and we're just getting to the stage when we're about to introduce contactless Relief Chest contributions. How about that? So instead of having to fill in a gift aid form, which is about the most tiresome thing you do in a lodge meeting, you can just access on the website with your contactless card and make a donation. And that I hope is going to be a game changer for everybody. And what a brilliant idea that was. Not mine, I'm afraid.
At least you're honest. But that's great, and it's really good news to hear, and I think it'll be very well received within not just the Masonic community, but in the wider community as well.
And in terms of your communication aspect of the MCF, Richard, in promotion and anything like that, obviously United Grand Lodge of England, they have the Freemasonry Today magazine that gets distributed nationally. A lot of provinces have their own magazines that they distribute quarterly, which engages a lot of their provincial members in what happens around their province. Is this something that the Masonic Charitable Foundation has themselves, like a quarterly magazine, and get distributed provincially to almoners, or anything that can, really promote the things that they've done?
What we do is we produce an impact report on a regular basis so that people can see what we've been doing, and that's available on the website or in hard copy if anybody wants to get a hard copy of it. And our communications team works very hard on liaising with the provinces about what a province actually needs, and we are able to supply any number of leaflets or electronic communications to show what we're doing. But it's a two-way process. People have to ask to get it, because we don't want to target randomly. We just want to serve what people would like to see. And but anybody who's curious can just get onto the website, and you'll find all sorts of areas where the relevant point of interest can probably be found.
Yeah. The next question we've got, Richard, which I quite like this one, was who was your biggest influence through Masonry, and did you have a mentor to begin with?
Yes, I did. Well, my father was a senior Mason, so that started it really. And so I joined up when I was at university, and I think probably the provincial lodge when I started was a major feature, but I've had so much help from other. When one starts to climb the ladder, you get a lot of help from people, and when I was asked to be a trustee of Freemasons Grand Charity, that was my first introduction in 1992 to Masonic Charity, and I've gone on with that ever since, and now find myself in charge of the whole thing.
Did you ever see it coming, Richard?
No, I didn't. It was an open competition. There were lots of people who would have liked to have my job, but I got lucky. And I mean, as I said before, I mean, all the senior officers think they've got the best job in Freemasonry, but I reckon mine must be one of the best.
I think that leads on a little bit as well, just on the next one, was is there any plans when you eventually get to the point of stepping down from your role as MCF president? Is there anything else you'd like to pursue in Freemasonry?
It's a good question, because I think you alluded to in the last social that not just your personal life and your career that were very busy, but your Masonic career had also been very busy. Yeah. You found little time to do much more than you probably would have liked.
Yes, I think there comes a time when you ought to step back. I reckon I've got 2+ years to go in MCF, because one of the I was appointed in order to stabilize the transition from the 4 individual charities into a single one, and we've now pretty much got there. And I think for 2 further years it would be nice if I were able to continue. But I think that there does come a time when somebody else ought to take over, and I'm not somebody who hangs on to position. What I'll do after that, I don't really know. I mean, my real interests in the world are money and wine, and there's plenty of scope. I'm on a large number of wine committees, and I'm about to add a couple more. And investments is something that's very close to my heart, because I need to subsidize an expensive lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, there comes a time when you shouldn't be in the center picture of Masonic life, because somebody else younger and equally or better will take over. And so you shouldn't hang on for too long.
Is there a position within Freemasonry in general, not Masonic Charitable Foundation aside, that you would like personally to achieve? Because we know that you're a very worshipful brother. How did that come about? And
Well, I didn't like to mention it, but you're actually 3 years out of date, because I'm
Oh.
right.
Oh, right. Sorry, the research from the website obviously needs updating. But
Well,
tell us
I
about that. That'll be a lot of the brethren really enjoy the personal side of our guests. So it'd be good to hear a bit about how you got to that position.
Well, I mean, there's no further promotion really from Right Worshipful Brother. There is, I suppose, technically a possibility of becoming a past senior Grand Warden, but that lies in the hands of others. And again, you know, one doesn't seek position; you get offered it if you pass the tests. But I think my Masonic ambition really concludes with being president of MCF, and it's a big job actually, because there are so many moving parts. We've got a substantial number of assets. We've got a lot of land. We've got a lot of property. We've got significant investments, which we're managing very carefully with a special CAIF fund, which will produce income and is doing very well. We have 4 investment managers who report to us on a quarterly basis, and we have an overarching investment monitor who makes sure that the 4 investment managers are doing their job properly. And we've just sacked one of them, for one of the investment managers who fell below our standard. And the replacement manager has been doing very much better. So it's a never-ending saga. And what I really want to see is us focusing on the assets that we've got, so that we can increase the amount that we distribute annually. And ultimately, we want to get 50% Masonic support, 50% community support, so that nobody can say Freemasons only look after their own. And that I think is fundamental to my vision for the future.
Fantastic. Well, Richard, it's been an absolute pleasure to host you once again. Thank you so much for joining us once again to answer the questions that we did not quite have time for. Like I said in our first social, it's always a bit of a privilege when we have to get guests back, I feel, because of the questions and the amount of the questions that we have. And it's down to the wealth of knowledge that you hold, Richard, in your position and your career. So it's been absolutely fantastic. Matty, thanks for joining us once again. This will be available on our YouTube page, on our Facebook page. And Richard, we sincerely hope that we talk to you again before you disembark the Masonic Charitable Foundation train that is doing so well throughout the country.
I'm very enthusiastic about what you're doing. I think it's fantastic to have young Masons as a group and a series of groups involved. And so why not fix a date next year when I'll update you on what's been going on since I've spoken to you now. But thank you very much. It's been a huge pleasure for me, and actually a complete privilege. I hope it's been helpful.
It's been absolutely fantastic. And I'll get this right this time, if you don't mind. Right Worshipful Brother Richard Hone, QC. Is that still wrong, or is that right?
That's right, but don't worry too much.
Lovely. Richard, thank you very much, and we'll get that date in the diary for next year.
Thank you so much. Bye now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.